on look at the Soviet Union tomorrow with journalist Alexander Paladin of Izvestia. And later in the week, actor Peter Ustinov and industrialist Armand Hammer. Also tomorrow, journalist Mike Wallace reflects on his combative interview style, and we'll have a debate on violence in professional boxing. For Sam Ford sitting in for Lark McCarthy, and for all of us here at Night Watch, I'm Charlie Rose, hoping you'll have a great Monday.
This is CBS.
WCCO Television, Minneapolis, St. Paul. Serving and informing the Twin Cities for 4 decades. This is WCCO Television, Minneapolis, St. Paul. And now, Mike Walshard, Dr. Walt Lyons, and Tom Hanneman bring you Channel 4's 10 p.m. report.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us. The roller coaster 1984 season for the Minnesota Twins is officially over now. After a slow and, some might say, sometimes comical beginning, the group of young ball players matured into an exciting team that almost took the American League West title. The Twins did not win the pennant, of course, but they scored an even bigger victory, you might say, by restoring baseball spirit in our area. And tonight, a group of fans numbering in the hundreds greeted the boys of summer as they returned home from their season finale in Cleveland. Barb Brown reports.
The fans began arriving an hour before the Twins' plane was due, and they just kept pouring in.
They're a great team, and we thank them for doing so great this year.
We absolutely adore them. We love them. There was no sign that the team had lost the last 6 games. In fact, you'd have thought they'd won the pennant.
They brought so much happiness to all the baseball people around here, and they brought things back for everybody.
Carl Pohlad beamed as he chatted with the fans and signed their posters.
This group is like a shot of adrenaline. I have never been so touched emotionally, and I can't tell you how much it means to me and how much it's going to mean to the Twins.
I think the people has demonstrated all summer long that they're Twins fans now. Really great.
By the time the plane touched down, the crowd had swelled to near 1,000.
I just want to say thanks for all the guys and myself. Thanks for your help. 85 next year, let's do it.
I really wondered if they knew that we lost, you know?
The Twins' plane may have landed with the sunset, but the fans here don't believe for a minute that the sun is setting in the Twins. With photographer Pete Newswinger, Barb Brown, WCCO Television News, the Twin Cities.
Elsewhere tonight, a tragic story to report from a small town of Meadville, Pennsylvania, where overnight a fire killed a grandmother and 7 children ranging in age from 6 months to 5 years old. The town is located about 50 miles northwest of Pittsburgh. Either a natural gas explosion or a malfunctioning kerosene heater touched off the blaze. Authorities say that 3 of the children managed to reach the front porch, but the roof then collapsed, killing all of them. 2 adults, however, did manage to escape the flames. Robbinsdale police are investigating a series of events early this morning that led to a 4-hour standoff and the arrest of 5 people. Police were led to this Robbinsdale home early this morning by a man who said his friend had been beaten at a party there, and people inside had fired several shots at him when he tried to leave. Officers from Robbinsdale, Crystal, and the Golden Valley SWAT team surrounded the home because they thought the victim might be held hostage inside.
After the officers took up positions outside the house and in the area, a female came out, saw the police, ran back in, and told the people inside the house that the police were here.
But one by one in the hours from 4 a.m. to daybreak, 4 of the people came out and were arrested. The 5th surrendered after talking to a police dispatcher on the phone. The SWAT team then fired tear gas into the home and went in. They found no more suspects. They found no victim. But minutes later, a woman across the street discovered blood in her kitchen. Police found a 42-year-old man hiding in her basement. He had been severely beaten and kicked in the face. He is listed in fair condition tonight at North Memorial Hospital. Neighbors in the area said police had been called to break up parties at that house before.
Almost always on a weekend, something going on. It may not be big, maybe 5, 6 people or so, a few cars, but nothing's been as wild as this with shooting that I've known.
Police say that aggravated assault charges will be filed against at least one of those suspects. That'll probably happen tomorrow. It looked like a rocket from outer space that landed in the yard of a family in Puyallup, Washington over the weekend. Actually, it was part of the engine on a Northwest Airlines jet. It had just taken off from the Seattle airport when the parts fell off the plane. The jet then returned to Seattle. It did land safely, no injuries. Metal debris fell in several places in that town in Washington State. It also busted the back window of a car. Fortunately, nobody was injured. More than a dozen anti-war protesters were arrested tonight in St. Paul. That's shortly after the Women's Peace Encampment was removed from outside the Sperry plant. That story and more coming up next on the 10 p.m. report.
It's the top cheese on the soup or entree. It's the top cheese for a sauce or snack tray. It's the tops on all-time favorites like apple pie. So celebrate, sure it tastes great, real cheese is why.
So to film a commercial. Now, once she's there, she's out of the Bujacks for good. Now, I'll see that she's safe.
Yeah? Same way you saw Mary was safe? What?
I said, same way you saw Mary was safe.
All right, that's enough.
First you get my sister killed, and now it's Maggie. Come on.
Stop!
Need a microwave form with microconvection to brown your bread. Or a recipe member.
Minnesota so-called Santa Claus has been found guilty of conspiring to smuggle and to sell drugs. After 16 hours of deliberation, a federal jury of 10 women and 2 men convicted Ramirez and 2 co-defendants on all conspiracy counts. Marcia Flora has been covering the trial from the beginning. She is live now in our St. Paul Bureau with details. Marcia?
Well, Mike, both defense and government attorneys were puzzled that the verdict took so long. Everybody agreed that it was a pretty straightforward case centered on an aborted cocaine mission Ramirez allegedly engineered in 1983. And his defense was basically that the government hadn't proved its case beyond the reasonable doubt needed to convict. One defense attorney said it was a simple matter for the jury. They had to decide, was Princeton pilot Greg Schmidt, the chief government witness, telling the truth when he said Casey Ramirez led a cocaine smuggling team? Ramirez sat quietly while the verdicts were read. Guilty, Kent Meckley, also accused of flying cover for the mission. Guilty, William Kaloum, accused of actually flying the cocaine-laden plane to the Bahamas to escape customs agents. And guilty, Casey Ramirez. Judge Edward Devitt remanded all 3 men into custody until a hearing next week on whether the trio will remain free until sentencing next month. There was quiet sobbing from some friends in the courtroom, which defense attorney Ron Meshbesher said touched Ramirez.
He really didn't say too much. He accepted it rather stoically. I think he felt badly for his friends in the courtroom who were in tears over the verdict. I think that hurt him more than the verdict itself.
Judge Devitt could sentence Ramirez to 30 years in federal prison on the charges. But Meshbesher says an appeal in cases like this is almost automatic, and he hopes to show that Ramirez is not a bad man and should be shown some mercy. Meshbesher says he was genuinely fond of the people of Princeton, Minnesota, and that his gifts were the trademark of a generous and basically decent man. Prosecutor John Lee stopped short of calling Ramirez a major cocaine figure, but he was pleased by the verdict.
Well, I think that the evidence speaks for itself. I think the evidence would indicate it was a major investigation and that we had a major case.
Ramirez, Meckley, and Kaloum will be sentenced in from 4 to 6 weeks, and while his attorney continues...
An IRS auditor, a telephone operator. John Fiorelli will repossess your car if you don't make the payment. A meter maid from here in Chicago, she'll give you a parking ticket. Driver for Diety Wash, he picks up your diapers. A garbage man, a toll booth attendant.
And we hope you'll join us.
A Twin Cities program for Indian health care is the second largest of its kind in the entire country. But funding for that program and others all across the nation is threatened by a potential Reagan veto. American Indian spokespeople say that even if the president doesn't act on the bill before Congress adjourns next week, the money could be delayed and clinics may be forced to close down. Barb Brown reports.
The Indian Health Board Clinic offers medical, dental, mental health, and health education programs. The bill Congress passed that the president may veto would give Minnesota Indian health care programs $16.9 million. Twin Cities programs $1.5 million. Much more would actually reach the Twin Cities through contract services, such as someone from a reservation coming here for surgery. Advocates say in the last 2 decades, Indian health care programs have made a difference.
The life expectancy back then for an average American Indian was 42 years old. And to this day, we have data that shows that the average expectancy is now 60 years old.
Crop found by authorities in a farm field near Cleveland, Minnesota. 2 suspects are in custody tonight, but their names are not being released until they've been charged. Authorities believe they planted the pot in corn that was high enough to conceal it. More now from Barb Brown.
The marijuana growing setup was as elaborate as the sheriff had ever seen. The 500 plants found growing between the corn rows ready for harvest were high quality.
This is what's called sensimilla. It doesn't have any seeds in it. They're buds where the seeds should be, and that's the best, supposedly the best smoking material.
Authorities burned the estimated ton of marijuana overnight. Besides the stock still in the field, they found 400 to 500 more plants drying, and several hundred small plants in an outbuilding nursery. The nursery was fully equipped with lighting and irrigation systems. The investigation began 3 weeks ago when authorities learned the 41-year-old farmer was trying to sell marijuana. An undercover purchase from the other suspect yesterday led to the farm search and the arrest.
We feel that if you burn $1 million worth of marijuana, it's going to take a lot of sales off the street.
Both suspects were born and raised in this area. One had been living in Oregon in recent years. The other worked his family farm. But according to people who know the farmer, he was having personal and financial problems.
There is some financial problems here, and the story is that that's how he was trying to better his financial situation by growing and the sale of marijuana.
The 2 men are expected to be charged on Monday with possession of a controlled substance with intent to sell, and one may be charged with the sale of narcotics. With photographer Pete Newswinger, Barb Brown, WCCO Television News, LeSueur County.
Tonight, less than 24 hours after we were reporting a tragic suicide double murder in South Minneapolis, there is a similar case in the news in northern Minnesota.